Hey, it's Drybear, back with another Diablo 4 build guide, and today we're going to be talking about the Poison Werewolf build. This build takes advantage of some of the coolest legendaries in the Druid kit to turn your wolves into werewolves, cause tons of poison damage, but also to be able to detonate the amount of damage that you have on the target for some serious big burst, plus constant DPS from the poison as well. This is a huge boss killer. It can be super fun for lots of different scenarios, especially in party play. And so if you're looking for a fun Druid build to play, this is going to be it. But first, you should come hang out with me on my live stream and the community. I'm live every single day. If you don't come hang out with us, then you're going to get an itch on your nose in the next 5 minutes. And when you scratch it, it won't go away. All right, let's talk build. Your builder is going to be Claw. You're going to be doing most of your damage in werewolf form and with your wolf pet companions. So obviously we're going to going with the only werewolf builder, Claw. You want to get as many, so there's going to be 2 different werewolf builds. I have a separate werewolf build on my channel as well that is pure, what I call true werewolf, and that you're doing direct damage, crit attacks with high attack speed. That's a pure melee werewolf build. This one is the rabies poison variant of werewolf. And so we're going to be picking up all of the different ways that we can utilize poison in this build. Specifically with Claw, we can modify it to get increased attack speed, but also Claw applies a poisoning damage over time. We do get a legendary that allows us to detonate poison damage. So every source that we can pick up of poison is going to be valuable because it gives us more damage, not only in the tick rate and DPS department, but also in the upfront burst department when we detonate that poison later on. Next, we're going to pick up Shred, the key hallmark spender for Werewolf Druid build. This one is a 3-hit chain, and you have a grace period to continue the chain if you use the first attack, and then do a builder, and then the second attack. And you do want to finish Shred, whether you're running the true werewolf build, which I have in a different video, or this poison build, you always want to be finishing the full Shred combo because that's where your highest damage output is. And in this build specifically, we get the bonus attack speed and the heal, but we're going to pick up the third attack is larger and applies a big, chonky poison dot on the targets that are hit by it, which will add up with the claw poison and all the poisons we have later on. That's going to give some really cool bonuses to DPS overall. For our defensive, we're going to pick up Debilitating Roar. And I know what you're saying, Drybear, you're crazy. And I am crazy, but not about this. Debilitating Roar is a better choice here than Bloodhowl. I would run Bloodhowl for the true werewolf build of attack speed and upfront damage with critical strike. But for this build specifically, I think Debilitating Roar fits much better. Now, by default, this is a werebear ability. However, we have a legendary that turns it into a werewolf ability. Here I have that legendary equipped, and you can see that on the skill, it now shows werewolf. So when you use this, you'll stay in werewolf form, you'll get all your werewolf benefits, but you'll also be able to reduce enemy damage dealt. You'll also get Fortify on your base life, and you can heal yourself on top of that. There's some other modifiers that we can get for Debilitating Roar in general, which will make this so much cooler once we actually put it all together. Which namely is this legendary. Debilitating Roar is now a werewolf skill, so it'll benefit from all the werewolf bonuses. But in addition, Debilitating Roar will immobilize poisoned enemies for 2.2 seconds. And this has multiple benefits in the build. Every target we attack is going to be poisoned. Most of our abilities apply a poison to the target. Our pets apply a poison. It's all going to work that way. However, we have plenty of bonuses that we get for attacking immobilized targets, and so do our companions. So not only are we applying poison, and then we can get the defensive benefits of Debilitating Roar, but we can immobilize poisoned enemies that can be CC'd, and we get even more benefits out of that. So go with me on this one. Debilitating Roar is significantly better. Now we're obviously going to pick up wolves as our companion, and there's a couple things to talk about here. You get the bonus damage from the active. Your wolves will do actually significant damage once you're fully geared, and they're very reliable on top of that. But the first modifier in this tree, wolves deal increased damage to immobilized, stunned, slowed, or poisoned enemies. So we can easily get the immobilized, we can easily get the poison. Both of these benefits are great. And then when you critically strike, your wolves gain attack speed. There's another option here for Fortify. I think this is probably the better choice, but your wolves will be a big portion of your overall DPS, and so we obviously want to pick these up. On top of that, we're going to run the legendary that makes your wolf companions into werewolf companions. Werewolf companions deal 90% additional damage and can spread rabies, which we're going to have in the build, obviously, but it's a great way for us to get we have 2 wolves. The wolves, the werewolf companions, will get a legendary that adds a 3rd wolf, and that also is a werewolf. So you're just going to be the werewolf pack of 4 werewolves running around. They do almost double damage, and they also spread rabies. So if a target has rabies on it and they hit it, it has a chance to spread rabies around, which is great. And you guessed it, that means we pick up rabies in our wrath tree. This is a werewolf ability. You strike the target, putting a big fat dot on them and deal damage to them, which is the poison. Infected enemies spread rabies to other surrounding targets. So naturally, rabies will spread on its own. Your werewolf pets will also spread rabies when they deal damage. And you can actually get some very significant rabies spread from all this, which is more poison damage, more ways to detonate. Rabies poison damage also increases over a lifetime, so the longer it lasts, the more damage it does. Great for killing bosses. And its total poison damage is dealt a little bit faster, which means it's just higher DPS for you. It gives it less chance to spread in this case. It might be optional to get the other pickup here for modifier, but I do think this is going to be worth it overall. In my basic testing, I think this one was superior. There's also some passives in the Wrath tree for Werewolf. You probably want to pick all of these up. You can slow enemies that are poisoned. Just makes it easier to group mobs up. Of course, this won't affect bosses, but you will get an extra slow on top of that. And that unlocks the tree of passives to do additional crit damage to targets that are poisoned. They'll almost always be poisoned to get more damage out of this. And Toxic Claws, critical strikes with werewolf skills deal % of their base damage as poisoning, with more poisoning damage for us to detonate. Now, there is a stable build with this where you would get your last ability in the build to be Lacerate. However, I think Lacerate as an ultimate works better for a true werewolf build where you're doing crit and attack speed. In this case, I actually don't think there's a legendary that makes, or an ultimate that makes sense in this build. And I'm gonna pick up Trample here. So if you wanna run with my crazy idea, I think Trample is actually ultimately is better for your gameplay, but also your damage output for a few reasons. Not only is Trample an excellent ability, allows you to shapeshift and deal damage. You become unstoppable, which gets you out of tight spots when you get surrounded. You can deal knockback to targets, and you can stun them if they get hit into an additional wall, which is great. But you can also get bonus damage on that. But the reason I like having Trample is for this legendary right here. Read it and weep, baby. Damaging a poisoned enemy with a Werebear skill, Trample, will instantly deal a % of the poisoning damage that's greater than 100 and consume the poisoning, which deals it's more damage than the poison that's left on the target, so it's more damage than the poison would have done, and you consume it. And this is why I think you don't run an ultimate in this build. You just run Trample. That means you can build up all your poison, trample all targets that have poison on them, detonate that poison damage, do a big burst, go back into Werewolf, apply all your poisons, and rotate. And I think the damage output, if you're running pure poison and pure rabies in this build, that you get from having Trample here is going to be significantly higher than Lacerate on a long cooldown. So Aspect of the Changeling's Depth puts this all together. Now, because you're running Trample, there's probably an option here to run Bestial Rampage as the key passive. What this says is that after you've been a werewolf for 2.5 seconds, you gain attack speed for 15 seconds. So it's a long duration self buff. And after being a werebear for 2.5 seconds, you deal increased damage for 15 seconds. The only caveat here is you need to be able to stay in werebear form for 2.5 seconds to get the buff, which last I tested, you can do this with just Trample. If you Trample and then don't use any shapeshift abilities after, let 2.5 seconds run, you can get this damage buff, and you only have to do that every 15 seconds, and it's a big damage increase, and obviously it's very easy for you to get the attack speed increase. I think this is going to be the best option for this build, but you do have to make sure you're maintaining that werebear buff, which means you can't Trample and immediately shred just because you'll go back into Werewolf and you lose the werebear buff. But I think this passive, that damage increase for all of your damage, including the detonate, including the poison, all of that fits so perfectly into this. This key passive is so good. Now keep in mind, they could end up nerfing this or changing it so it's not possible to use one werebear ability to get this buff, but I think as of right now in my last testing, all of this works and fits into the build. On top of that, there's a legendary that exists that's not in your codex, but it allows you to give your companions the Bestial Rampage key passive, which means that when you get the 2 buffs from being in Werewolf for 2.5 seconds and being in Werebear for 2.5 seconds, that attack speed and % damage increase also applies to your 3 Werewolf companions. So if you get this legendary, oh, it's so juicy. For legendaries, Aspect the Unsatiated is pretty good here. You may not actually get the kill credit from Shred. I think this legendary works better for the true werewolf, where you're doing crit and attack speed with upfront damage instead of bleeds or poisons. I think this one works better for that, but there could be an over-under. It depends on how it applies the kill credit. Like if they have the poison Shred on them and they die, does that give the credit to Shred, which means you get this bonus? I couldn't get a consistent answer on that when testing it, so we'll need more further testing on this, but this is an option for legendaries. Anytime you're running Trample, I would consider running Ghostwalker Aspect as well. While unstoppable and for 2 seconds after, you gain increased movement speed and you have no collision. You can move through enemies. So Trample plot gives you unstoppable, so anytime you run Trample, it's worthy to consider getting Ghostwalker Aspect in your build, because then you can trample forward, move through enemies freely, position wherever you want, and you get increased movement speed every time you trample. You could also fit Shepherd's Aspect into the build. Core skills deal an additional 6% damage for each active companion. Since we have 3 with the werewolves, we will get some value out of this, and it will affect your Shred specifically, though I have a feeling that as you get better gear, this one starts to fall off. Without question, Rapid Aspect is a great pickup here. Attack speed for your claw means you build faster, you apply poison faster and more reasonably, and anytime you're running a melee build, Rapid Aspect is great because it means that you can attack and reposition right after. Animation cancel the attack and start moving, which is excellent for melee. It gets you out of danger much quicker. And I mentioned it many times in the video, but just so I'm clear on this, gain one additional companion from the Stampede legendary. I think this is an easy pickup for this. It gives you 3 wolves instead of 2, and it also increases the companion's skill damage. When I was testing it, this only affected the active ability, not the passive, although they might change this, and I hope that they do, because I think it should apply to both. But this is an excellent pickup. Always pick up Stampede anytime you have any amount of reliable damage coming from your companions. And that's the Toxic Claw Werewolf Poison Rabies build for Druid. This one is super strong, very fun, very reliable, and it's fun to just be hanging out with your wolf pack, running around killing people. So there it is. If you had value, you found value in the video, or you just had a good day, and I hope you do, leave a like down below, leave a comment down below, and hang out my live stream. Or don't. You're an adult. I don't control your life.
If you enjoyed yourself today, leave a like down below. You can support me and my work on Patreon and view Patreon exclusive content, link in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.